It is better to think of church in the alehouse than to think of the alehouse in church.
Welcome back to the Go to Hell podcast. Strong opinions weekly held about Christianity, the church, and beer. I'm your host, Tim Curley, and I'm joined by my co-host, Colton Pierce. This is part 2 of an episode, so we're skipping. How are we doing?
Yep.
What are we drinking?
We are drinking the double IPA Gen 8 from Firestone Walker. It's a collaborator with Ism Brewing Company. It's an 8.8% ABV, so only just as much as the hazy that you had last night at Kauai Brewing Company.
Yeah, that was a gateway drug, that beer they had at Kauai last night. It was super drinkable. I got hoodwinked.
It was too sweet for me, but
I knew right when I tried it and I saw you, the just look on your face. I'm like, this is not Colton's thing. It needs a little more bite to it.
Yeah, it wasn't. Yeah, I was like,
which is why I was saying, like, this is an old school original East Coast hazy that was flooding the market 10 years ago, maybe.
What was the one that I actually there was a hazy at Kauai that I liked for a really long time, and I would love to see it come
that
back.
one was that Ditches and no, not Ditches and Hose.
No, not Ditches and Hose.
Yeah, what was that one? That was really good.
It wasn't Foggy Day, right? It was something squared.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Because they made a double version of
Yeah.
it too, and it was like, was it Foggy Day or Foggy Schedule? No, it wasn't that one.
Funny thing,
Brian. If Nolan was here, Nolan knows exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Brian disclosed to me last week that Golden Boy, which was a really good iteration by them.
Golden Boy was good.
That was done with like 8-year-old hops that they found sitting around that hadn't been used. I was like, well, you couldn't tell. It didn't sound like out of date funky hops. It tasted really fantastic.
No, that one was good. I was getting a cilantro to start, and then I was following it with the Golden Boy, which I'd never.
Yeah. He was like, yeah, apparently those packs really keep the freshness, because it didn't. He said, I was worried that it was just gonna fall flat because they'd been sitting in bags too long. But I said, nope, that was pretty good. Yeah, they had the really good hazy. What I liked about that beer is it
was Ligma, right? Wasn't it
Ligma? There you go.
Yeah, that one was
Ligma.
good.
That beer reminded me of Heady Topper from the East Coast. Made by Alchemist. It just, what it lacked is what you didn't like. It needed a little more bitterness, either on the front or the back. Probably on the back.
And I'm not close enough.
And if it had that bitterness, I would have been like, you stole Heady Topper's recipe, which, if you're not a beer aficionado or if you're West Coast only, Heady Topper is similar to Pliny the Elder in terms of its reputation on the East Coast. And I have a photographer in New Hampshire who shoots everything in Boston. He's close enough. He photographs Patriots and the MLS team. What's the MLS team? Anyway, the MLS team and yada, yada, yada. Anyway, he drop shipped me on 2 or 3 occasions several 4-packs of Heady Topper in dry ice and via ground, because you have to ship it ground. But anyway,
they're like the New England Renegades or something.
Revolution. There you go, Revolution.
Yeah, there it is.
So this beer is not my favorite. I don't know what it is. There's some flavor in here.
There's Nelson hop in this for sure. It doesn't say it on here. They didn't tell us their hop blend, but I can tell you that it's
there's a funky flavor profile.
Blah. It's not my favorite either. I like a lot of the things that Firestone Walker does. I like that they try to be creative. They try different things. There's some beers that are like S tier from there. Like, again, what's our West Coast? That's the British English combination. The Union Jack.
Union Jack is old school.
Yeah, Union Jack is
Double Union Jack is even better. I still don't know why they don't mass produce it anymore. It
Union
was
Jack
fantastic.
is an S tier West Coast IPA. Lots of people. You should drink that one 100%. Some of the Luponic Distortions have been really good. That's kind of their experimental IPA series.
The original beer. Original beer. I'm surprised a lot of people don't like it. Like even within our beer circle, their DBA, which is a double barrel ale. Firestone Walker was started by. I don't remember their first names. Mr. Firestone is the grandson, or I think he's the grandson of. I think it's the Firestone Tire Company. No, they're a wine company. They're a prominent wine company, I think, out of Santa Barbara. Because wine country does extend all the way down to Santa Barbara. He decided he didn't want to be in the wine business. He wanted to go out on his own and do the beer business. His sister married this Brit, last name Walker. So they started Firestone Walker. Their first beer was DBA, double barrel ale, and they used the same barrels that their family was using for. I think they were used barrels, but they were using the same oak barrels that their family was using for their wine, and so it's a English ale with a unique flavor because it's been
which is interesting because
I like DBA.
My issue with DBA is I feel like it lacks flavor.
It does. It's an English ale. A lot of English ale does not. It lacks what more. I would say more flavorful ales have kind of a nutty flavor. I don't know if that comes from the malt or something else that they add to it, but it's kind of flat. I would suggest if you're going to drink it, find it fresh. Because I think the older it sits in cans, it gets, or even on bottles, tap, yeah. It gets even flatter.
Yeah, it's just
They have a different version of it at the tap room over in Paso Robles, and it's better. I think it has more flavor to it.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, we definitely need to go up there. We were talking before we started recording our second episode just now. We were talking about how we've made the Dust Bowl trip, but we as a group should head over and just spend a day in Paso Robles and hang out at Firestone Walker.
Yeah, it's a cool place.
Even go down to Slow maybe because Slow's got all those breweries over there.
You can go to Slow. You can go 2 minutes away around the corner and go to Barrel House, the original location.
Yeah, it's hard to go to Barrel House's original location when we have one in Visalia.
That's true. Firestone's got a really good kitchen. My last trip to the coast, I think I mentioned on the show. I would go to Central Coast Brewing Company. I enjoyed that place. What did you get
last time you were at Firestone Walker when you went?
Last time I went, like in the tap room.
Yeah, you got food, right?
Yes.
What'd you get?
Usually when I go, I usually get an order of the wings.
Oh, okay.
Their fish tacos, I don't remember specifically what I had, but I like their fish tacos.
Their fish tacos are good. I got their fish and chips last time.
I have had their fish and chips and not had a problem.
They were like soggy.
And
I was like, what? Why?
There was a time I do remember my wife and I there once.
And so I don't. And I've been there and it's always been great. And so I was like, did they like have a dip in performance? And so that's why I was like, last time you went, how was it? Because I'm like.
I was not disappointed the last time I went.
I went a year ago, and I was by myself, and I had fish and chips, and I had like a beer. I might have had 2 beers, and then I left. Not because I was like upset with anything.
Right.
Like, I was just like, man, that wasn't the fish and chips I was wanting. Because also, the fish and chips that I had at, Stone kind of set the bar. Really high on fish and chips. So
yeah, the problem with those places is head chefs come and go, and maybe there was a bad day where they didn't change out the oil and they should, or it wasn't hot enough.
I mean, they were like soggy. They were soggy from the standpoint of like it was almost, they didn't get it crispy enough, and then it's like they like sat, and like the steam was able to.
Might have happened. Yeah,
break down the bottom part of the fish, or the crispiness on the fish, and so it was like, man. So.
There was a previous time that my wife and I went. We sat down, and I think I ordered fish and chips, and the waitress said, "Oh, sorry, I meant to tell you the fryer's broken." And then I said, "Okay." she said, I'll give you a minute. Come back. She comes back. And without thinking, I ordered something else that had to be fried. She's like, again, the fryer's broken, so we can't fry. Oh, I'm sorry. So the third time around, I was an ass and ordered another thing. I ordered the appetizer thing of 5 different fried foods or whatever. And she just looked at me and looked at Danica, and she was like, do you ever have to tell him to fuck off? And she said a lot of times she would fuck off and then turned around and walked away. And then about another minute later said, can I take your order? So it was a lot of fun. But,
awesome.
I was like, I was glad she took it that well. She had a lot of fun with it. So I was like,
That's
all right,
awesome.
I'll take a burger. I don't know.
But yeah,
I think that's what I ordered the second time was the wings, not thinking some places don't. Most places do fry the wings.
Yeah, it could be
a little bit.
It could be like a roasted wing or something.
Right.
Like
And so I was like, the wing. She's like, again, the fryer. I was like, oh yeah, okay, yeah. I didn't think about that. So because their wings aren't heavily breaded like some places are. Well, usually the heavily breaded ones are the boneless. Anyway, that's a whole other.
No, I have. There's a spot in Hanford. If you've ever been to Chicken Shack, their wings are breaded then fried, and then they do the whole tossing.
Oh, okay.
And so it's like you're eating fried chicken covered in sauce. It's fucking delicious, and I'm like, this is how wings should be done. And that's not. I do love a nice crispy skin flat.
Yeah.
Those are super good, but it's kind of fun to have the breaded fried chicken flavor.
Best wings I'm getting right now is our food truck at Kauai every Friday. Jeff has a cherry jalapeno sauce.
Shut the fuck up. I haven't had that one. Remember, I got shut down on that one. We had the barbecue when we were at whatever.
It's not even hot. So he had told me the week before I'll have wings, and I'd forgotten. So I think right after you left, he walked over and said, I have wings tonight. I was like, oh. So I went over there and
Last night.
What
a bitch, Jeff.
So I walked over there and I said, I'll take, how many wings do you have? Because I got plenty. I listened to you because the last time we were there, he ran out early. And I was like, dude, you got to buy more wings. So he's like, I listened to you. I bought a lot more wings. I have plenty of wings tonight. Because he was going to be somewhere tonight. And so, or the next day, he's at the
Their
last
wings are the best in our area.
They are.
And I'm sorry, Jeff. They're better than your burger. And I know that everybody raves about your burger, which is awesome. I'm glad. You put way too much mayo on your burger. Also, my bun needs to be a little bit crispier. Those are
I'm okay with them. I find it sometimes too salty. That's my big complaint.
You said too salty, yeah. Wait, you don't feel like he over mayos sometimes?
Everything else is just so melted that I lose it gets lost with the whole smash thing.
I also want a crispier.
You can tell him no mayo. I don't think he's going to be offended.
I know, but remember we talked about this. And maybe people are going to be like, "What the heck?" I like ordering things the way that the chef intended.
You've eaten it now how the chef does.
Oh
it.
yeah, I know.
I always forget he puts pickles on there. I take a bite and then I have to take them off. And the last time I did, I was like, son of a bitch, that actually kind of tasted pretty good.
With the pickle.
The pickle. I'm like, nope, now they're out of here. Nope, I don't need that. But yeah, so I ordered the cherry habanero, whatever the dry rub is, which is another, I think it's a pineapple or something.
Oh, then maybe. I tried to have the dry rub. I thought that was the
dry
habanero
rub is
one.
fantastic too. And then he had a Parmesan. So I took a order of all three, took them to the table and said, everyone dig in. And he knows how to fry correctly. And his sauces / dry rub are amazing.
Yeah.
And chicken wings are like kind of what you were talking about with fish and chips. You think it's not easy. It should be easy. It's not actually. I'm reluctant to order fish and chips at a lot of places. So.
Yeah.
Like pastrami sandwich, like that one's one that's hard to make. properly. So I'm only going to order it a couple places. Fish and chips, like it's just fried cod. How could it be hard? No, there's well done, and sometimes there's not well done. The place here in Visalia, we're way off topic, but I don't care.
Who cares?
California Fish Market, is it?
The California Fish Grill?
Fish Grill. I went in there and finally tried it out.
Dude, I still haven't been there. I tried convincing Audrey to go. And
Fantastic. Now, I took the food and brought it home. I would not take... You could take your food home because you're right around the corner.
Right
By the time I got home, we had ordered fish and chips, and they had catfish. I was like, I haven't had catfish in a while. I want to see what the catfish is. And unfortunately, one, they used the wrong containers. Their containers, I think, aren't
with like
vented.
The plastic lids or whatever.
They're plastic containers, and I don't think there's any holes in them.
Yeah, so they just basically.
So I opened it up, and then
steam
steam came flowing. I'm like, fuck! And sure enough,
everything
tasted really good.
Yeah, you had the wettest fucking fried.
It tasted really good, and I was like, I'm sure that's really good crispy breading. So we enjoyed it. Their slaw is different. It's like a Japanese kind. It's got meat, it's miso. Miso. But I enjoyed that. Danica was skeptical, but she was like, "Oh no, this is actually really good." So anyway, next time I go, I think we're just gonna eat in, so I can get it fresh. But they also have non-breaded fish as well.
Yeah, I've seen their fish taco menu, and I'm like,
they have Taco Tuesday, and I was like, oh, we should come up here for Taco Tuesday.
Yeah, and you know who's been a big fan of them for a long time, and I haven't gone over there? Brandon Price. Brandon fucking loves that place.
Okay, yeah.
And I'm like, man, I need.
I've driven past it. I think I might have been to one in.
The shitty part is you got to go into the fucking mall area to get to it, and you're like, you know.
I think I've been to one in Beverly Hills. I'm not sure. I don't know if it's the same place or not. Anyway, it's a nice little place. So that's Fish Talk with the Goat Hell podcast.
Yeah, well, and
but actually, yes, wings. You and I are very, very picky about wings.
Oh yeah, 100%.
And they are. It seems like an easy thing to do. Look, you can go to Costco and get your big bag of frozen wings, and it's perfectly fine. But if I'm going to go to a restaurant, I'm not going to spend what I'm going to spend on chicken wings because it's overpriced.
Yeah.
So if I'm going to go, and it's known within our group that I'm the chicken wing fiend. If we go somewhere and I'm not feeling it on a burger or sandwich, I'll just order a bunch of wings and eat wings for my dinner.
Yeah, and it's the best.
But I am still
because Tim also
picky.
shares those wings, and then Colton gets to experience the other people.
Yeah.
Because I'm not the type. Because Tim just laid it out. No, here's the thing. Tim just laid it out. He said, "I'm not the type. Like, wings are very hard to do, and like we're very picky about our wings. So Tim's a lot more adventurous with it, where I'm like, I'm not ordering your fucking wings. Like, I'm not gonna order your wings if that's not your specialty and that's not what you do.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not gonna order your wings because I don't want to be like blah. But it's great because we've been able to have places because Tim's been like, I'll order the wings, and we have the wings that are there, and I'm like, those are pretty fucking good.
Russian River has pretty fantastic wings.
River has pretty fucking good wings. There's a pizza joint in Visalia that does.
Yeah, their wings are better than the pizza.
But their wings are fantastic.
They have some amazing sauce. They know how to fry.
They have some amazing sauce. Only nitpick that I have about their wings, sometimes they come out with way too much sauce on them.
Yeah. You just need a little bit.
Yeah, I just need a drench.
Which is why,
but they're like,
if I'm being honest, I prefer a dry rub to actual wet sauce.
Yeah.
But most places don't know how to do a really good dry rub and get it applied, which is why I don't know what Jeff does, but that dry rub is on there. It ain't going anywhere. It's very well done.
Yeah, it's so good.
Dry rub I also prefer because you're usually leaning into something being spicy. That's just the way it is.
Yeah.
You're using like cayenne pepper or some kind of pepper. That's the main thing. And you're balancing out with a little, but because you and I both steer clear generally of the sweet unless someone's gotta order it.
Unless there's like zest that comes with
Right.
it. Like, I'm not getting a hickory barbecue or whatever.
Did enjoy Jeff's Parmesan, but again, he dressed them properly. He didn't dress them like Buffalo Wild Wings, where if you order the Parmesan there, it's just Parmesan
And
with
garlic.
a side with some chicken somewhere in there.
Oh, yeah.
And you're like, okay, yeah, I really like Parmesan as a additive, not my
Yeah.
main flavor.
Yeah, so again, this has been Chicken Talk with the Go to Hell podcast.
This is welcome to NPR, National Public Radio. You've listened to Chicken Talk, brought to you by the Ford Foundation. All right, episode 2. So I rambled and rambled. We gave an intro to what are going to be several episodes about politics, including a book called Party Crasher, and then I gave a rambling description of my political background. So now it's your turn.
Yeah, and I don't think this episode is going to be as long as the first. I don't have as much. I mean, I don't have as much of my life that I've lived. I have lived through key important moments in this country's history that are definitely going to be in textbooks later on in life. Which I'm surprised that Tim didn't talk about COVID. He's probably tired of talking about COVID, and I feel like a lot of our nation is tired.
Yeah,
of
that
talking
never
about
even
COVID.
occurred to me.
Which is crazy because, again, in 100 years, it's going to be written about. Like, I know that seems weird, but it is.
Well, you do your talk, but let's have a conversation about COVID, because I think that is COVID is a great example of where the church is divided on how to deal with politics
Oh, yeah,
and
100%.
Christianity. So we'll finish up with the conversation on that.
So, oh, man, I was born in 1995.
I just won a CIF championship the year before.
Nice. That's awesome.
Undefeated.
Wow.
Set
yeah.
records. Yeah, right up there.
So I was born in 1995. I'm on the cusp. People put their years in like different orders as far as what the generations are. So I am at the cusp of either being a millennial or a Gen Zer. So
Quick insertion. I've read of some things and then heard a couple people talk about it. That is important to note, because the people on the cusp you can't classify them as strict
one or the other.
one or the other. You can't, like, if you're on the cusp of the boomer and the silent generation, they have tendencies of both. They're outliers.
Yeah.
It's a subset of outliers that, like, well, I kind of feel like everybody who just went off everyone who lived through the Depression and went off and fought in war, but I'd actually fight in war, but I understand where that mentality comes from.
Yep.
And then part of me, though, sees these boomers and being like, fuck our parents and the whole world's going to change. And I kind of see that. So, yeah, when you're on, it's important to point out, when you're on that straddle, you have whatever it is. It's the zeitgeist that you're living in, the culture. You're kind of torn. You're a person of two generations and you're being torn by those. So,
Yeah. And
or it gives you insight into both, where people are like, fuck millennials. You're like, well, I'm kind of one, and so I kind of understand. Or, F this group. You're like, well, actually, I kind of understand why they act that way. So,
yeah, and so I'm on the cusp. I'm both a millennial and a Gen Zer, and that's actually kind of where I would describe myself. I don't fully align with millennials. I know millennials, and I know the stereotypical millennials, and I'm like, I don't really fit in with them. I feel, and that's where it's like I more resonate with the Gen Zer on some of those elements, where I'm like, yeah, this is more me. But then Gen Zers are also another beast, where you're like, I don't necessarily fully agree. And I mean, like, a lot of people feel that way about whatever stereotype that they're in. They're like, yeah, I'm not fully in on that. And
Yeah.
I get that, but I do feel like for us and what we've experienced growing up is that I don't relate to I can't relate to those that are older than me in some aspects, and I can't relate to those that are younger than me in some aspects. My younger sister is born 4.5 years after me, and we live two separate lives.
Yeah.
And it's only 4.5 years different. She's a Gen Zer. And here's actually the breaking point, and I'm not even going to use this to talk about politics, but when we talk about Gen Zers, I think that and so what I say is I usually claim that I'm a Gen Zer, but I'm pre-iPhone. So
that's a huge, that's a huge...
because it's 2004 YouTube comes out, 2007 is the release of Steve Jobs' iPhone, and then the world completely changed. To where now parents give their kids some sort of electronic device. It doesn't have to be an iPad. It could be whatever to just like pacify them on a regular basis, right? Like that's, and so I'm not a part of the crowd that was that way. Like, but I'm not fully the 80s, 90s, or the late 80s, early 90s babies. To where technology is still accessible. I remember playing computer games growing up and all that kind of stuff. That it's completely different. So I'm a Gen Zer, I'm still pre-iPhone, because by the time that the iPhone came out, I don't know, how old was I? 2007, I was in the
12?
sixth, I was like 7th, 8th grade, 6th or 7th
You said
grade.
you were born in 95, so you're 11 or somewhere between 11 and 13, 11 and 12.
Yeah, so I was like 6th, 7th grade when the iPhone came out. And so I'm not, and that was back when they were like, that was a ridiculous price for my parents to be able to afford. And then I got my first iPhone when I was a junior in high school. So that's when I got one. But meanwhile, kids nowadays, all their parents have one. So like I said, parents use it as a pacifying device. So like parents will be like, oh, here we go. They're able to pull up Netflix on their phone and they can hand it, or Disney Plus on their phone. They're able to hand it to their kid, and their kid sits there and watches that on their phone for X amount of time. And I do think that translates over to a lot of kids nowadays. They, like, and I'm not saying it's a good or bad thing. I don't have a problem with whatever is going on. I'm just saying this is a legitimate thing, is that kids now spend a lot of time on YouTube. Kids will tell me all the time about influencers, people that they're watching, and I'm like, you just watch YouTube? And they're like, yeah. That's a far-fetched idea to me. If I get on YouTube, I watch YouTube for like 20 minutes at most. At most. I was like, actually, if I'm being honest about when I get on YouTube, it's like for a minute or two to like look up something. These kids will spend hours on YouTube watching somebody just talk to a screen. And I mean, like, if you're listening to this podcast and you're like, well, yeah, you guys get on here and you talk for 2 hours. But you're listening to this. You're not watching me just like talk at a camera. But kids do that on a regular basis. So it's just it's a weird dynamic that I just don't understand. Like another thing that's crazy. So for some of you that don't know, like Twitch, this is kind of a weird thing to help kind of show the difference between me and a Gen Zer. So for those of you that don't know what Twitch is a video game streaming site. Gen Zers love to watch people play video games, which is bizarre to me.
That one's I don't get that at all. It's
right?
So
like,
weird.
And I mean, like, and so like kids think they're like, well, you watch people play soccer, you watch people play football and all that kind of stuff, or whatever sport you choose. And I'm like, yeah, I don't have easy access to 8 to 10 other guys and then another 11 on the other side to go and play soccer games all the time.
Yeah.
You have,
but my
you
son-in-law,
have access to that video game anytime you want.
My son-in-law would watch other people play Dungeons and Dragons on Twitch. It was like, what?
It's bizarre. 100%. Like for me personally, like I can't relate. So that's kind of like, that kind of shows where it's like, okay, so I understand Gen Zers to some extent, but then there's some things where I'm like, I don't get that aspect. And I still blame it on, and I mean, like, it's not a blame, but I still attribute that kind of behavior and where that all comes from the iPhone release and having easy access to all that kind of stuff. That stuff still doesn't make sense to me, but I'm still saying that, but I didn't grow up with that. Like, So here's an example. I grew up playing one of my favorite games growing up was the Ocarina of Time by The Legend of Zelda. Okay. If I wanted to learn how to beat that game because I was only like 7 years old at the time. Okay. I know that I'm not advanced enough to beat all of Nintendo's puzzles that they put in The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. So if I wanted that, here's how I had to figure out how to do it. I had to either buy a magazine, a gaming magazine that told you like walkthroughs, or I had to look it up on the internet. But that was when my parents had to unplug the phone and then plug it into the side so that way we could have internet, or it was like I had to figure it out. And so that's how I had to figure out how to beat something growing up, a video game that I was playing. And most of the times it was literally like I just had to figure it out. But other kids, like kids nowadays, they're able to just watch a YouTube video. Like a YouTube video will solve everything for them. They'll just show them step by step how to like beat Ocarina of Time in like 2 hours or whatever, which is, I'm like, that's insane. It's crazy. Just our world has changed that much in the span of whatever. And I know that may seem like something that's like not that big of a deal, but trust me.
No, it's a.
Think about recipes for like
specifically,
cooking.
It's not a big deal, but it's one of thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of ways that things have changed. Again, we're living. If you want to know what it was like to live during the printing press, we're living through that, and maybe on steroids, because the printing press was. You owned a printing press, you were filthy rich, so you had very, very rich people printing Bibles, printing pamphlets, political pamphlets. So even then, it wasn't democratized the way this sharing of information is. It was very democratized compared to before, where you only had monks writing, rewriting things like Bibles and other things, or rewriting them, and that's how you shared information. That it was democratized for the day, but this is on steroids.
Yeah.
And in the same way that the printing press literally changed the way people thought and acted, yes, it seems silly, but that kind of thing is like, no, this is one of many. It's one little ecosystem that's changing and changing and changing, and so collectively, society is learning how to evolve and adapt to these little changes.
And there is no part of me that sits there and says that it's bad. So if anybody is sitting there
No,
and saying like, this is terrible.
There's bad parts of it and there's great parts of it.
Yeah, I'm like, you're fighting the evolutionary process if you're sitting there and saying that this is terrible.
You've mentioned your friend who just left to go translate the Bible.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Could you have done that before the internet? Sure. But the internet makes that actually accessible now and much easier to do.
100%. And yeah, so we've talked about it. I don't remember what the particular law is in nature and in the world, but basically whatever has the potential for good also has the same potential for bad. And so if you're sitting there and you're sitting and I think that when you phrase it that way, it's terrible. But if you sit there and you phrase it a different way, where you say everything that has the same potential for bad also has the same potential for good.
Yes.
And so if you're sitting there and you're saying, and I think that this is not a uncommon idea about the internet and about technological advancements, is that we're getting further and further away from, morals and values, blah, 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 blah. And all these kids are on this the entire time. And I'm like, we're evolving, and this is how we're evolving through this process. And so, but also there's a lot of good that's coming out of it too, that a lot of people are not recognizing. We just want to focus on the bad. And yeah, there is an element of, okay, we can focus on the bad. So hopefully, we're not delving into the bad.
Right.
And I get that, but also understand that technology is a beautiful, wonderful thing, that we're not just going to sit there and say, all right, let's get rid of it altogether. And it's like, well, that's silly and ridiculous. So how do we work with it? So for example, like I'm a teacher, and so how do we work with AI now being able to write essays for students? How can we teach students to use AI without it being plagiarism?
Yep.
That's actually more of the important thing. Instead of just sitting there and saying, all right, we're now just going to have them write essays in class by hand, But meanwhile, those teachers that are saying that are using AI to write their resumes for them, reference letters for students, all that kind of stuff. And they're like, no, well, it's different because, I have my career and all this kind of stuff. It's like, what? That's ridiculous. So how do we teach them to use it effectively to where it works? All right. So we've now established where I'm at in the realm of how I was born, and well, not how I was born. You can all figure that out. I don't have to explain that to you. But where I was born and kind of the situation around it. If I'm talking about, really, if I remember correctly, my first experience with politics was in 2000. My parents had a bet going. So I remember going into kindergarten that day, and we had to vote between Bush and Gore. I voted for Bush on mine, but it was only just because of a name. Like, it wasn't because there was anything else going on. I'm 5 years old. There's no way I know anything about the political landscape of our country. But it's kind of a fun activity. The parents were like, or the teachers were like, all right, who are you voting for, Bush or Gore? And like the kids all vote. And my guy lost. I know. I'm living in Sonoma County. How could Bush lose to Gore? And so, but my parents had a bet that night. I remember we got picked up, and whoever won the election was going to win date night, or family night. So if Bush won, we were going to go bowling. If Gore won, because my mom was voting for Gore and my dad was voting for Bush.
Oh, they're unequally yoked. How dare they?
So if my dad won, we were going to go bowling. So if Bush won, we were going to go bowling. And if Gore won, we were going to go mini golfing. And I think we ended up going bowling. But it was just because Dad was like, I think we won.
Wait, who you were going bowling if who won?
If Bush won. So he was like,
oh, that was a very who decided that? Do you remember? I got bowling for Columbine on my brain, so this is like it's a dig to Bush because he allowed the Columbine kids to shoot people. Anyway, it's a terrible joke.
Oh,
never mind.
I was like, maybe people that were around for the Columbine shooting, not me, would understand that joke. But yeah, so that was that. Again, no idea. I remember when 2001. 9/11 happened. I do remember vividly my parents calling me into the living room and just being like, hey, look. And my mom was kind of like, she was not desensitizing us to it, but just was like, oh, look, here's the building. It goes, woo, it's going down. I remember that very description of kind of making light of it. But I knew that it was a scary time for my parents. I know that now, but I know that for her, she was trying to make it not scary for us. Because we weren't all of a sudden not going to school that day. We were in California. It happened at 6 a.m. or 7 a.m.?
Yeah, it was between 6 and 7, basically.
Yeah, and so, and we were early rising kids, and so, at around 6:30, my mom watches it, and my dad and my mom are not going into work, and it's like, and I do remember kind of consciously, I was like, oh, maybe it's a Saturday or whatever. Actually, no. Actually, I say that. I was never actually supposed to go into school that day. I went to a year-round school, and we were just at the beginning of our autumn break or fall break. We had a fall break in our year-round school, so we actually started school at the week or two after the 4th of July, and so right around that early part of September, we got a 2-week break, and so. And so we weren't supposed to go to school. My mom and my mom and my dad both called in from work that day. So I don't really remember. I mean, I'm 6 years old. I don't have an idea of Afghanistan and Iran at the time and what's going on in Iraq. I'm like, okay, we go to war. There's nothing. Really, when I start hitting my political battlefield, so to speak, is in middle school. I remember that's when everything kind of started for me because actually the big thing that we had to fight for as Christians in our country was against the gays in 2008. And I remember in 2008 being very much pro John McCain and anti Barack Obama. I was like, ah, man, as an 8th grader or 7th grader, I was like, no, like we can't let this guy take over our country, blah blah blah, yada yada. And I was like, I'm going for the other guy who's gonna, not support all this, not support welfare, not support all this stuff. And I mean, hopefully all of you are like, yeah, 7th graders don't really know anything about the world. And yeah, that's 100% true. But
no, but it's still shaping. I mean, kids are being shaped. They don't just wake up one day at 25 and like, oh, I got to get a job and like get out into the world. And now I need to pick a political party. You're part of the culture, you're the zeitgeist, blah, blah, whatever word you want to use that you're growing up in. So
yeah, and I very much believed that there was no way that you could be a liberal or a Democrat and be a Christian at the same time, because all the Christians that I knew were all Republican, and we all had the same values about abortion, about homosexuality, and all that kind of stuff. Let's fast forward a few years later. We're in high school. Actually, the most important part, I think, for transfer for high school, I actually escorted our young Republicans club leader was who I escorted for homecoming.
Hell yeah.
Cassie Bergman. And I was a part of the Young Republicans Club. Yeah, again, I didn't really agree with liberals and people on the left at that time, but I do remember. Okay, so when I was graduating that year, I graduated in 2013. So 2012, again, I was going to miss that election. But I do remember looking at the two candidates at that point, where we had Mitt Romney and we had Barack Obama, and I was like, I'm going to be 100% honest, I don't actually like the Republican nominee.
Yep.
I was like, I wasn't a big Mitt Romney fan, and
Filthy
I was like,
Mormon.
and it was just, and I felt like that was the beginning of kind of that process for me, where I was like, okay, this is who everybody else voted for, but that's not my guy.
Yeah, he had that button down Bain. He was from Bain Capital. He just had that button down like corporate. Yeah, I remember. I voted for Gingrich, I think, in that primary. I did. Romney was not anywhere at the top of my list. I was just like, I don't trust the guy. He'd governed as a liberal in Massachusetts, which I get. You're in a liberal state, but then don't show up and be like, "Hey, I'm the conservative guy." So I never liked him. That was one of many elections where I held my nose. So I mean, I didn't vote for George W. Bush in the primary. I don't remember back then who I voted for, but he wasn't my choice either. So
yeah, and Romney, I was like, yeah, I don't care for you.
Yeah, he's got a attitude about him.
Yeah,
I didn't like McCain either, but that was for different reasons.
Well, and that was
yeah.
okay. So to show counter to what I'm saying right now about Mitt Romney, it was McCain was. I was like solely into McCain because he wasn't the other side.
Yeah, well, that's fair.
But then 4 years later, we get to Romney versus Barack, and I'm like, okay, I'm still for our side, which was the Republicans, and I was like, but I don't like this guy, and I don't think that he should be voted for. And that's, and we're going to revisit that in a minute, because yeah, it goes from there. So I also lived through the 2008. I lived through the 2008 recession. My parents became homeless during that time. They were able to make their way up. My parents are doing really well now. But that was a really, really low point in our lives. And what was crazy was in 2007, my mom was trying her darndest to get a house. She wanted a house with everything that she had. She wanted her own property that she could, manage and take care of. Like, my mom wanted that American dream aspect. And what was so crazy was we were homeless before the recession happened. And that actually probably saved us in a way. because my mom wasn't able to get that house in 2007,
Yeah.
which would have been at some ridiculously inflated rate. And to which then she was able to own a home in 2011. They were able to buy a home, and then in 2000, and it was the home that we were renting. We bought our renting home, which we bought it for like $110,000. Like, we lived in a tiny, tiny house, in Tulare. It was a tiny home, and then in 2014, my parents were able to buy a really nice, brand new home, over there on past Bardsley, in that area that's just behind Starbucks now and Taco Bell and that.
Oh, yeah.
So, really great kind of a way to see how my parents kind of went through that whole process. But that being said, it was kind of tough. So I lived through the recession, and that kind of shaped, the way how a lot of people view like welfare and that kind of stuff. Watching my parents have to struggle for everything, but I watched them work, and I watched them work hard, and they never took handouts, they never took welfare or anything like that. And I was like, we were homeless, and you still didn't accept that. And so that's where Tim doesn't like the whole term "pull yourself up by your bootstraps," but I was watching my parents do that, and so I was like, this is how it's supposed to be done. Like, if my parents are able to do it, then everybody else can do it too. And so I started going to college. I was a part of a couple of Republican campaigns. I helped out a little bit. Nolan was a lot more involved than I was. But I started having conversations with people in college and stuff. And I realized that people on the right were a lot more right of me, and then I would have conversations with people on the left, and they were a lot more left of me, where I was like, I don't agree with that, and it was like, oh, I don't agree with that either on the other side. And so it became a lot more problematic. I took that quiz that you were talking about, and so Tim got labeled a libertarian, and most aligned with the Libertarian Party. I was actually aligned with the Republican Party, and I put how I agreed with that, and yada, 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 and blah, blah, blah. And as time goes on, I realize more and more that it's really actually that I'm a lot more centered than a lot of other people. I really agree with a lot of things that people on the left say, and I agree with a lot of things that people on the right say. And I want to say that I agree, because I think that both sides have really good points and really good things that they're trying to push. And I think, and I don't want to say disagree, because I think a lot of times we focus on the things that we disagree with. We're like,
that's the problem. We focus on.
So I think that the left has really good points on particular topics, and I think that the right has really good points on really good topics. And what actually this ended up doing was I ended up really isolated in the middle. And it's so sad. There's so many people in our country that are probably in the middle, and they're actually really isolated, or they feel isolated. Because if there's people on the left, and if you look at the political spectrum and you look at it kind of like a timeline, right? You have the people on the far right, you have the people on the far left, and then anything in between, and then you have the people in the middle. If I have a conversation with somebody on the left, I'm obviously more right than they are. Not more right correct, just I'm more right on the political spectrum. And so therefore they view me as an enemy or somebody on the other side of them. And so they want to be combative and tell me that I'm wrong and I need to be on their level. And on the flip side, if I'm arguing with if I'm having a conversation with somebody on the right, I'm more left of them. And so they view me as a leftist. And so I'm a liberal, and I have these ideas and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, no, I agree with you on actually a lot of things.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we never focus on the things that we agree upon. It's always we want to focus on the things that we disagree and correct those people. And so that became really that became a big struggle for me through my early 20s and now into my late 20s, where I'm sitting there and I'm like, oh, well, agree with things on both sides. As a Christ follower, I can see how governmental policies in place that allow us to protect those that are less fortunate are important. As somebody who also had a grandfather who I was working under in my early 20s, who was a small business owner, I could see how governmental involvement was ruining his business and how he owed shit tons of money to the IRS because they were just taxing him for this and that and this and that and that and this. And for things that they shouldn't have necessarily been involved with. And so I can see both sides of the coin all the time. There's lots of things that I can see that are good and bad, but I'm sitting there constantly having to defend my viewpoint to both people. And so that actually gets to elections. So in 2000, I've only been able to vote in 2 presidential elections. That's what's important for me to emphasize here. I've only been able to, in my point in my life, vote in 2 presidential elections. Both of them have included, and now my third one will have included Donald Trump in them. All 3 of the elections that I've been able to vote in have included Donald Trump. So my first election, again, similar situation to the Mitt Romney. I did enjoy, and maybe we've talked about it on this podcast before. My parents have always been they've kept up with politics. We always watched every single year. We always watched the State of the Union address. We always watch that every single year. Right. We always watch the debates when they come on. Like, it's very important to us that that's something that we participate in, and we listen to them advocate for their policies and their foreign policies and all that kind of stuff. And I had watched Donald Trump go through the primaries, and I enjoyed Donald Trump being a part of the primaries. And the reason why I say that is I enjoyed him being a part of the primaries, not because I liked him as a person or because I liked his debate style or anything like that. But what I did like was that people were talking about issues that actually mattered. And no longer was these debates were like fluff pieces where people were just sitting there and just like blowing smoke up each other's asses. It didn't feel like that, right? It was all of a sudden, no, we're going to talk about the border. And we're going to talk about the fact that all you people aren't doing your fucking job. And that's how I felt at the time. I felt like I was like, things aren't getting done. I think Donald Trump represented, and this is how I believe that he won the election, is that Donald Trump represented a portion of the United States that was very much like, things aren't getting done. I'm not the politician. And so Donald Trump got to sit there in the debates and sit there and say, all you fucks are politics. And you're not getting shit done. None of you are getting shit done. And so that's what made the primaries with Donald Trump, that's what made him grow and become who he was. Because he could sit there and say, let's talk about the border crisis. I'm a United States citizen, and I feel like no shit is getting done on the border crisis. And I'm here as a citizen to come up and say, let's get this shit fucking done. And meanwhile, all the politicians have to sit there and go, well, like, it's a lot more complicated than that. And like, like, you just don't really understand kind of how this whole thing works and blah, blah, blah. And he got to sit there and a majority of Americans at the time were feeling the exact same way. Lots of people in the United States, and I don't want to say a majority of Americans. I did say that, but I'm like, okay. But he represented people that felt the exact same way about lots of different topics. So maybe you didn't agree with the border crisis, but maybe you were talking about the way the United States was handling X, Y, and Z. And he got to sit there as an outsider that wasn't a politician, that wasn't involved, and you felt like he represented what you were talking about for years and years and years. And so it was fun to see in the primary debates because he was going after these people, and it was fun to watch the politicians literally sit there and sweat their asses off because they couldn't compete with that. Yep. They didn't have an answer, because normally in politicians you would sit there and you would go after somebody and you're like, you've been in office for 20 years and you haven't been able to accomplish anything. And then they would respond and they're like, well, you've only been in politics for 10 years and you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. And it becomes this kind of like back and forth and the political bullshit, and you're like, whatever. So Donald Trump gets into the finals, so to speak, of he is the Republican nominee, and we have Hillary Clinton as the Democratic nominee. And I was like, I said, I don't give a flying fuck for either of these. Like, I don't care about either of these people. I definitely don't want either of them to run this country. I don't want it. I was like, I don't like either of these people. I think they're both terrible human beings. I don't want them as my president. And so when I went into the voter's box, I voted for Jesus Christ. And some of you are like, well, way to waste your vote. And we'll get to that in a minute. But when it came to Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, I was like, and that's when I really started struggling with and talking with people where I'm like, if I had to choose, and people were, well, it actually came more to a head in Donald Trump versus Joe Biden. I think in that one, everybody was shocked that Donald Trump won. If you voted for Donald Trump and you thought he was going to win, I don't know what news source you were listening to that told you that Donald Trump was going to win that election. I think the entire nation, based off of all the things that I had watched, all the things that I had seen, everything, I was like, yeah, it was a good run, Donald. Like, it was fun for you. But, all right, Hillary Clinton is going to be our president. Like, let's resolve how this is going to happen. And then he won. And I felt like he didn't even know he was going to fucking win, because his address to his like acceptance speech of the nomination or whatever, or was like, that was a shitty ass speech, bro. They just they wrote that like on the fly. They were like, all right, Kali fucking won. What the heck? So, and that's what it felt like. So we get through his presidency. Again, COVID is in the middle of it, and we're going to get back to the COVID thing in a minute. And also a part of that is the George Floyd incident, which I think we need to get to with the COVID thing. We get to the Joe Biden versus Trump election. And it was very disheartening to hear lots of people who are like, we can't go through another 4 years of Trump, and we have to get that evil man out of office. And they would sit there, and I told them from the beginning, I was like, I don't like Joe Biden. I don't like Kamala Harris. I was like, I'm not voting for them. And they're like, so you're going to vote for Trump? And I'm like, nope, I'm not voting for Trump. I didn't vote for him last time, and after I saw him in 4 years, I was like, I'm not voting for him again. And I was like, I'm not voting for either of them. I'm going to vote for Jesus Christ again. And my father, who has taught me about politics my entire life, decides to lay into me about how the fact that what I was doing was wasting my vote. And I was like, and I called him out. Like, I was like, that's fucking bullshit. I was like, don't ever say that ever again. If you're going to sit there and say that it's so important to vote for years and years and years, and everybody's like, it's so important to vote, but it's only important if you vote for these two people. I was like, vote for the person that you feel like actually fucking matters, and the person that you actually want to win this. And I was like, I don't know if there's anybody in this country that I have seen up until this point that I want to run this damn show. This entire fucking shit show that's happening. And so don't sit there and say that, well, you got to vote for the lesser of two evils. When it comes, I stand by, and I've talked about it on this show before, is like there's a book series that's written. It's very well done. It's a TV show, but the main character always talks about how when it comes to the lesser, if I have to choose between the lesser of two evils, then I'd rather not fucking choose it all. Because that shit and that shit.
Yeah.
And I don't want to choose between that. And especially when it comes to running this country, and and here's the thing is, you actually don't have to choose the two pieces of shit. It's not like you're being forced to choose between the two pieces of shit. You can choose somebody else. That's how our country works. The primaries are actually fucking stupid. Do we all understand that? Where it's like, we sit there and we're like, okay, well, like, all right, who are we most likely all to vote for so that way we can overthrow the other team? That's fucking dumb. Really, actually, what it should be, if we're talking about it, it should be everybody in the primaries all up against each other. But no, it's about who do we feel like we have the most likely chance to win with. That's what the primaries are about. It's not about who you, because there are people in the primaries that I'm like, I actually align with that person. But as soon as they lose to somebody else, all right, well, because I'm associated with this party, I'm voting for that person for the rest of this go. Never mind the fact that you voted against them in the fucking primaries. But you're like, but they're more aligned with me than the person that's across the aisle. And that's been the whole thing. I remember having a conversation with my mother about when in 2008, she was devastated when Barack Obama chose Joe Biden as her running mate, or as his running mate. She was like, this guy hasn't done shit for politics. My mom was a huge Obama person. She like signed up as a part of like to get the updates. She was like, yes, this is hope coming in. And also, just so we're clear, my mom voted for Trump over Hillary. She voted for Trump.
Right.
And so, and she voted for Gore. Then she voted for Bush over Kerry. She voted for Obama for both of his administrations, and she voted for Trump. My mom usually picks the winner. It's kind of interesting. The only time that she didn't pick the winner, apparently he was the winner, but the Supreme Court didn't think so. So, that was more of a joke than anything else. But again, when it came to the Biden administration, so she's like, I don't like Joe Biden. I don't like Joe Biden. And then all of a sudden, 8 years later, because he's running against Trump, she's like, we got to vote for him. This is the guy. This is the guy that's going to save our country. And I was like, Mom, you fucking hated this guy 10 years ago. I was like, did his politics change? And she's like, well, no, but he's running against Trump.
Who she voted for the first go round.
Exactly. And don't get me wrong, people can change. I'm not sitting there and saying, please, by all means, don't think that what I'm saying is that when you go into the voter's box, it better not ever change. You stand by your morals, because I fucking hate that, where it's
right.
Like, you need to sit there and admit when you've been wrong. Absolutely. But don't sit there and vote for a guy just because he's running against somebody that you believe is, I don't know, but that's also part of it, where people are like, well, that's an evil man on the other side, and so we can't let him get into power. And so this is our best chance to make sure that Adolf Hitler doesn't get into office. And we use so much of that terminology, and this is the political climate that I've grown up around. This is it. And when we talk about demonizing it, and we do this such on a regular basis, is that in our political spectrum, we sit there and say that those people obviously don't know what they're talking about, and these people don't know what they're talking about. And we listen to our people. I've mentioned it on this podcast before that I think a phenomenal documentary that everybody should watch is on YouTube. You should watch The Social Dilemma. And you should watch what they talk about when it comes to the politics, where if we continue to feed ourselves on just the information that we like to listen to, then we're never going to be able to grow, to develop. Of anything, we isolate ourselves with all those people that we isolate ourselves with. So, when I had learned about that, and I had actually learned about this before watching this documentary. So because of that, my main source for information, whether you like it or not, is, and I told you that I grew up a Republican and all that kind of stuff, I actually go to CNN for most of my news. A majority of my news comes from CNN. You can tell me that they're biased, blah, blah, blah. All you Trumpists can come after me. That's fine. But I was very I very intentionally sought out CNN because it was one of those where people were like, well, this is a leftist kind of thing. You know, you got the CNN-NBC crew that's really far left, but then you have CNN, which is a little bit more towards the middle, but it's still pretty far left. And you're like, okay. So I chose, and still to this day, I go to CNN for pretty much most of my world news. But I also teach it on a regular basis. And so it's something that I practice on a regular basis. How to be able to wade through the bullshit that's presented to you and realize what is biased and what is not biased. Because once you're able to recognize that and you're able to do all of that work, you can actually depict what is actually news and what is fluff bullshit. And you can sit there and say, why do they talk about this person first? Why do they talk about this person second? Are they promoting this person because they're the first person that they're talking about? And yes, all of those things are true. But once you're able to realize that, you can go to news from any site and be able to know what is true and what is not true with just being able to know what they are how they are manipulating and how you cannot be manipulated. And we try to teach that to high schoolers. They don't care for it. Adults know about it because they're like, oh, I know all about the bias and blah, blah, blah. People that watch Fox News talks about how they know all about the bias, but then read into every single piece of bias that comes out. And I'm going after Fox News people because that's largely what's in our area. It's the same thing with CNN people and MSNBC people. They're like, oh, no, we know about the bias, but ours is not biased. It's ridiculous. So that's the political climate that I've grown up around. That's the easy way to really describe it. Like I said, I'm in the middle. I'm definitely not a libertarian like Tim is. I think libertarianism would probably work out well in God's ideal version of the world. But I say that and people would sit there and say, well, wouldn't God be the governing body? And I'm like, yeah, technically, yeah. I always think that it's funny that, and Tim may disagree, and that's okay. I think it's funny that libertarians often don't like governments getting involved because they're corrupt and all this kind of stuff. I fully agree that individual people are corrupt and all that kind of stuff as well. I don't think anybody can sit there and say that I do believe that the world can be better, but I also do know that government can come in and help create laws that keep people from their greedy desires from manipulating the way that the world works, which can happen in a free market system. That can happen. And it can happen the other way too, where governments obviously abuse their power because the Russians believe that they're communists, but they're not, right? They're under a dictatorship. And only certain people are benefiting, right? The true definition of communism is not actually happening in Russia and China. So it's always funny when people are like, we hate those commies. And I'm like,
yeah.
I was like, that's not true communism. That's not what Karl Marx wrote about, you know? So, I don't know. That's the world that I've grown up in. Any thoughts, Tim?
I got lots of thoughts. I think that's what you said about libertarianism is fair, which is why I never voted. It's kind of like an ideal. I would say it's one part revulsion. That might be a strong word. Distrust of government and its corruption and the power it can use when people are corrupt, when when it's someone being corrupt to another person, we have a legal system. Somebody can sue, you can sue them in court, that kind of thing. When the government's involved, there's nothing you can really do. The laws are generally, it's fairly difficult. It's almost impossible to be able to sue the government, and the government at the end of the day can literally use force to require you to do something, whereas private businesses generally can't do that. If you're existing in a monopoly, then you have to operate with that business. Then there's some level of force there, but it's market coercion. It's not the use of guns and violence, which ultimately the government has a monopoly on. The government is the only one that's legally allowed to use force, except in rare situations of defense. And so it's that kind of skepticism and distrust of government that comes out of libertarianism. So from there, it's trying to balance out that you still have to live within government, and what's the limits there, and how do we limit power. The system we have when it was first created was a very, I wouldn't call it a perfect system, but it's a fantastic system, where you actually have three branches of government pitted against one another. You have to have three branches of government that are jealous of their branch's power for our government system to work, and that doesn't exist anymore. Like I said, the courts tend to want to do their system. The executive branch has all kinds of incentives and is encouraged to do whatever it wants, either through the presidency itself or through the bureaucracy. But somewhere along the way, our legislative branch decided it wanted to not be jealous of its power and let the executive branch and the judicial branch do whatever it wants to do. And we just sit back like passive ladies at the tea room on a Sunday who are getting the vapors because something's not going their way. So our system's broken, unfortunately. It's broken in terms of how it was intended. We are not a free country compared to when we were founded. We have a lot less rights than we did when we were subjugated to an English king. I'm not saying we should overthrow the government or anything. It's just the reality. We live in a fairly free society. Day to day, we're pretty free to do what we want. We're also pretty heavily regulated for a democratic republic. So those are just kind of thoughts, not here or there. Bootstraps comment. Yes, I was very emphatic in the previous episode that I hate that. And why I hate it is there's certainly truth to that, and I don't think it's a phrase that should be outlawed. I think the right has used it as an excuse. I think it's similar to why I've softened on the homeless and stuff like that. One needs to... I think there's a lot of areas in life, particularly in politics, and like I said, I'm a libertarian, but I don't. It's irrational for me to expect for people to live that way. I think a lot of people, right and left, need to start accepting dichotomies. And yes, we should be on the one hand, we should be teaching kids, youth, young adults, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. You're your best champion. It doesn't matter where you grew up, you have opportunity. It might be harder for someone who lives in East Baltimore than it is. It's certainly harder for someone who lives in East Baltimore versus someone who grows up in Rancho Cucamonga or Federal Way, Seattle. Yes, these things are true. But you, at the end of the day, you determine this life. And if you want to get out of this mess, I think that's something we should preach. My problem with the bootstrap thing is, again, it becomes an excuse by people on the right to be like, well, if someone could just they lost their job because the factory went overseas. But you know what? Suck it up, buttercup. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Telling a dude who's 52 years old, 2 kids in college, still has a little bit left on his mortgage. And you know what? Yes, he and his wife decided to raise their family in a way where she was at home and they lived off his paycheck. And the response is, suck it up, Buttercup. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Now it's time to innovate and find a job or start a business. That's not reality. Those are platitudes. Those are empty platitudes by right-wingers that are just as empty as a lot of the platitudes that come out of lefties and progressives.
Yeah.
And right-wingers need to stop falling into that trap. Because you know what you get? You get angry Trump voters. No, I'm serious.
No, I know, yeah.
When Trump came around
I just wasn't ready
and
for you to
all
say
of
it.
these people for the first time voted, I'm like, yeah, I get it. Because we did a deal with Mexico. We did the Mexico-Canada deal in the 90s, and we did free trade with the EU. Remember, Hillary was trying to push a free trade deal with Asia, and people are like, no, I've seen this before. I've seen this before. My job gets sent overseas. I'm not doing any of these deals anymore. And is there a level of irrationality to that? Yes. But I think there's a high level of dishonesty coming out of the people who just say, like, free markets are great, man. Free markets are great. Everything works out, man. Free markets are wonderful. And you make that lie long enough until... And the other thing is, we forget... When we talk statistics in this country, we talk on a national level. And we need to remind ourselves, we are still a country of regions.
Yes.
When the unemployment rate is 2% nationwide, and it's 7 or 8% in Eastern Kentucky and West Virginia, no one gives a fuck that that there's a 2%. All they see is them and all their neighbors don't work anymore because we shut down coal mines or whatever.
Yeah.
And the government's thing is, well, we shut down coal mines because they're dirty. Yeah, okay. And what was your plan after that? To tell everybody, suck it up, Buttercup. Everyone move out of Eastern Kentucky and West Virginia and go find a job somewhere else. Okay. So you think all those people in New York City are going to love tens of thousands of people coming in trying to find work? Again, these are empty platitudes said by people who claim to be political scientists, and a lot of what they're selling is just religious talk.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you've written a book, and you've got some statistics to back you up, but at the end of the day, a lot of this is just really no different than Christians teaching preaching their stuff and just saying, like, no, I'm telling you, if you follow this Jesus guy, your life gets really better and everything's great. It's like, that's the same horse shit you've been selling with economics.
Right.
And all of a sudden people come along and go, I'm not doing it anymore. I'm going with that crazy orange man. Because he is a traitor to his class. Somehow he gets me.
Yeah.
So that's my thing on bootstraps. It's just become an empty, cheap thing to tell people to say, basically, I don't give a shit about you because I got a nice cushy job in D.C. or New York and L.A., and I'm not going to apologize for it. So go fucking figure it out. It's a free society.
Yeah.
I think we have become we've become too hyper individualistic in this country, and it started probably in the 70s. There's two tracks of it. There's the left, which says I can do whatever the hell I want to do with my body.
Yeah.
Stay the hell out of it, which is not true. Which is, yes, you can do whatever the hell you want to do, but then you want everyone to pay the consequences of single moms or AIDS or other venereal diseases, and now everyone's got to solve this problem. No, I was told that you can do whatever the hell you want with your body, and now I got to fix your problem.
Right.
And on the right, it's hyper individualism with economics and other and things tied to that. We need to get to a healthier, and because of and a lot of that's become we've turned politics into religion. We've turned conservatism and progressivism into political thought ideology, which is really just religion. I don't think the country operated that way for the first 100 years or so. People certainly had their ideas. You had the Federalist Party and the Republican Democrat Party. They disagreed over ideas of how much the government should be involved. Jefferson, viewed the country as this agrarian country that people should be left alone. Farmers know what they're doing, blah, 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 blah. You had the other side, Hamilton, who wanted to be a little more involved in running the economy. So we've always had differences. Clearly, we have political parties. But I think we've turned politics and political thought closer into religious thinking since about the 50s. And you have people, Milton Friedman is the John the Baptist Jesus or Jesus of free markets. And you've got Gloria Steinem, who's the John the Baptist or Jesus on the left of you can do whatever you want with your body. You're free to do whatever. And politics needs to, and I say this to myself, it needs to become a lot more practical.
Yeah.
Yes, I don't want government involved in anything, but guess what? We just voted. We just had our politicians, and we went along with it and said it's great. We just voted that we're willing to import cheap goods at the expense of jobs going overseas. We made a decision. Was it the market just didn't do it? The government said, we are going to encourage it. Okay, what are you going to do about it to those people who get destroyed by that? Oh, we're not going to do anything.
Right.
We're not going to do anything. No, we live in a free society. No. You changed regulations either within this country or with another country to encourage that. So your hands are on this.
Right.
This isn't just the free market.
Yeah.
No. Go sort it out on your own. Binary choice. I love that you brought that up. You either got to vote for this guy or not, or him or her, or it's a wasted vote. I had a heated discussion with friends again on the right at a brewery. Brought that thing up, and I was ready for it. It's the biggest horseshit I've ever heard. They actually teach against this in political science. Not everybody does, but it was I was one who believed in binary thinking, and that got taught out of me at UCLA. Of no, not voting for the two big choices is a vote in and of itself, or not voting. Period. You want to fill out your ballot for Congress, maybe for your senator or governor that you like. Fill out your ballot,
Or your county rep.
or your county.
Whatever. Yep.
But you have.
Your school board rep.
You
Go
have
for it.
enough people not vote. Because these votes get tabulated. Some enterprising person like Steve Kornacki with NBC will sit there after the election's over and say, hey, you know what we're finding is there's like 50 million Americans who voted for Congress and everything else, but they didn't vote for president. Whoever the president got elected, that tells everybody in Washington and everybody who voted against them, you have no political power. People did not like you. Not only did not like you, they didn't like the other guy either.
Yep.
And that's the way I am with this election. I don't like either one of these guys. I am not going to vote for them. I will either not vote or I will write someone in. And if you think I'm throwing away my vote, I am not. I am saying I've been given two choices by these people who vote in these two parties, and I disagree. You know how political parties change? When people start saying, I don't like the shit you keep serving me every 4 years.
Right. And
How about
like,
you,
we'll
we create a new party?
We'll just vote in the primaries for the one that you actually want.
Correct. No, actually, you're a broken party. I don't like this party anymore. We've had parties come and go in this country. There have been political realignments where people start saying, I am not voting for that crap anymore. I'm voting for this upstart party. And usually what happens is the upstart party merges with the dying party. Then we get a new party. But it's still, the political change occurs. And as long as we keep being told, no, man, it's you got to vote between Hillary and Trump and anything else, man, that's just a wasted vote. You might as well just not vote. Or you're terrible, man. I mean, you got to vote for one or the other. Got to vote for. No, I'm not voting for either one of them. Let's do beer of the week, last beer of the week, and then I'll do my last thought. And then you can chime in with anything else.
Our last beer of the week is
Beer. It's the best damn drink in the world.
well, it's you know, I have to say, maybe I need to drink them side by side so that way I can sit there and definitively say which one is the better of the two. But it is up there as one of the top 2 pale ales that I've ever had. And so I'd like to see it I'd like to taste it side by side with Sierra Nevada's pale ale. Maybe
yeah, we should do a blind test.
Maybe a little blind taste test of just being like, all right,
If Danica serve up in the other room and bring it over.
is the Fight On pale ale from Stone better than the Sierra Nevada
It's so
pale
good
ale?
though. It's so good.
It's so good.
It has that soapy.
I want
bitter
everybody
taste on
to
the back.
click record on your on your things. Make sure that you have it, and you can play it back to Tim whenever you see him. Because
Look, USC's got a phenomenal law department. They've always had a top-notch medical department.
they do have one of the best film departments.
They have a great film department, and if I'm really being honest, the president they brought in about 20 years ago upped the ante on academics overall, and they've become a top-flight school all around. They were not for a long time. It was a school, if you specialized in the postgraduate programs, that's where you really got your money. But if you're an undergrad at USC, you're basically going there and you're part of the USC mafia, which is great. I mean, you pay money for that, so you come out, you got all your friends you went to school with, you got all these people that are all in the real estate business in Southern California. They went to school with. I get it. That's not irrational, but it was not a top flight academic school. They did also have a very good religious school.
Yeah, they did.
With Dallas Willard at the head, which it should have, because it started out as a Methodist school way, way, way back in the day, like most private schools. But yeah, they've turned themselves into a top flight academic program. And these
Are you choking up over there?
These fuckers from Stone that I guess went to USC are making a great pale ale in I think some of the money goes to, goes to the athletic department. I might have to. That might be a bridge too far. To have somebody steal it for me, or
It's so fucking good, dude.
it's so amazing.
It's so good. I'm literally like, I might have an orgasm over here. Like, ugh, golly, it's so good. It's light, it's crushable, it's drinkable. Coming in at 5.5% alcohol by volume, I was like, I could drink. Yeah. Again, this is one of those where
if this was in the scores,
I'm feeling like it's October right now, and I'm watching.
Yeah,
I should be watching college football right now.
If they would mass produce this to where we could get it at like the Target down the street, or you could get it at Save Mart, I would have my fridge packed with this during football season.
Oh yeah,
and I would sit there during USC Oregon and root for Oregon, but drink the USC beer and not think twice about it. It's just like, it's great beer, man. Hope you lose, though.
Yeah, exactly.
Cheers to you getting your ass kicked today.
I was like, my dad's a USC doctoral grad. My grandpa is a USC doctoral grad, and so it's kind of it's hard to hate on USC too much in my family because my parents come after me quite a bit. But I'm an Oregon guy through and through. I've never been to the school. I have looked into their master's programs, which, just so we're clear, they've only got like 4 online master programs. Which,
really?
Again, that's part of the whole thing where we were just talking about earlier, where it's like, are we just like building new buildings and not like investing in this?
They're just leaning into being like a 40,000 student undergrad. Four online master programs. It's so crazy. So that's surprising. I wonder how big their campus is, because they might not be as big as I think, because they don't have that big of a master's program.
Yeah, I've never been. I want to go so bad.
Like, because UCLA is big but it's when you add in all of the postgraduate departments that they have. They got one of the top business schools in the country, Arthur Anderson, Anderson
100%.
Business School. Their medical department's top flight.
They also have a really good film school at UCLA.
They have
too.
a
So, I mean,
phenomenal
I was
film
talking about
school there.
USC, but also UCLA.
Yeah,
is
they
one of the
both
tops in the
do.
country.
They both got their, And they had one for a long time. That's where Jim Morrison of the Doors. He was in film school at UCLA when they started the band. I think some of the other guys were going to UCLA too.
Hey, when you guys were at the Clash this year, had they finished up the?
No, they're still working on that
still working
strange.
on what's his name's?
Lucas's looks like a big Millennium Falcon
with like plants on top of it.
It's odd. They're still working on it. They were getting close.
Sorry, that was a sidetrack. I had forgotten.
So anyway, cheers to USC and Stone. You guys crushed it.
Yeah, so good.
Elevate your space with Jollywood Live Edge custom furniture and discover the art of craftsmanship. At Jollywood, we transform your vision into reality with our exquisite custom furniture and woodworking. We source only the finest woods and materials, ensuring durability and elegance in every creation. Our commitment to the highest quality and exceptional service ensures that every piece we create is not just furniture, but a masterpiece. Experience the perfect harmony of beauty and functionality designed just for you. Call us at 559-553-2010 or visit us on Instagram at Jollywood Official to start your journey today. Jollywood Live Edge Custom Furniture. Crafting quality, creating legacy.
All right, last point. I brought up when I was talking in the last episode about how we need to get over this language of demonizing everybody for their positions, and I stick by that. I will say we're in this strange period where we're very open to demonizing people because of their ideas. And we don't criticize them. And I'm not saying demonize. I don't think we should demonize either. But we're very reluctant to criticize people for their character.
Yes.
Now, a lot of people don't like Trump because of his character, and I get that. And they won't vote for him. And a lot of people on the right find that ridiculous. I don't. If you find him a person of no character and that's your reason for not voting, I understand that. What I don't understand is you then vote for Joe Biden, who's been a person of zero character his entire career, dating back to when he lied about where he finished in law school, which you say, okay, politicians, no, we need to stop doing this thing where we excuse politicians because that's a politician. Again, then they're never going to get better.
It's like
you want to
lean
like
in
and
and saying like, all right, well, like, I mean, like it's an athlete, so like, okay, they're gonna rape a girl every once
right.
in a while.
That's the mentality. If you expect low expectations, you're going to get low. You're going to always achieve low expectations. So you want to lean in and say you finished at the top of your class in law school, and turns out you were not first in your class. You were last. That's a big lie. He plagiarized speeches on numerous occasions. He was always pugilistic in interviews to anybody who questioned him. I mean, the guy's just been a blowhard at best, an asshole at worst.
Yeah.
And then he gets in there, and now he's all of a sudden like the second coming of Jesus. And it's like, no, this guy's been a bad dude character-wise his entire career. Let's not shine over that. And in one respect, I love George Bush Jr., George W. I love George W. Did he have a mush mouth? Yes. Was he bad at communicating? He wasn't very good at it. I don't even think he was a very good president. I think he will properly be rated at probably low third. I think that's fair. I voted for the guy twice. I didn't think twice about it. But I will give credit to that guy. He is a man of character. He lived out his demons in his early adulthood and had to work through those demons, and through his wife and coming back to faith, worked out those demons so that by the time he was a Christian, by the time he ran for president, I disagree with a lot of what he did. I think he gave his administration over to too much warmongering, and he'll have to answer for that, I think, when he goes and sees Jesus. But I do think he was a man of character.
Yeah, go watch, isn't Christian Bale the one who plays,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Cheney was a guy, I loved Cheney, and then I figured out who Cheney was, and I did not like Cheney.
No, Cheney was actually really good at making Bush look bad and him look really good. But meanwhile, a lot of the stuff that was going on was Cheney was at the reins.
Yeah, and that was George's problem. George tried to run the presidency like a corporation, where he just like, all right, you're the chief war officer, go get things done, and then like 6 months later, stuff's not going well. It's like, well, you've already outsourced that, so it's too
right.
bad.
And meanwhile, it kind of was like a corporation where it's like, well, the shit's on your face.
Yeah, no, and I appreciated Bush. He meant it when he said it. I appreciated a guy who said, "Hey, look, I'm going to do what I'm going to do. History can judge itself." Because I think too many of these people who get into too many men, because we haven't had a woman yet, too many of these men get into political and become the president, and the first thing they start worrying about is legacy. Man, that ain't your problem. The legacy will sort itself out. Yeah. Get stuff done.
Yeah, go do what you need to do.
Go do what you need to do, and then let the legacy sort itself out. And I think even though George's legacy, I don't think is going to be kind to him because of his managerial style, I appreciate the fact that he was like, I don't care. I'm going to do what I got to do. We'll let the historians figure it out. I got bigger people to answer to.
Well, and here's going to be the hard part is... And I mean, we're going to start the COVID discussion, I'm sure, but...
Oh, yeah, let's end with COVID.
Well, and so what I'm saying is, I think during the COVID crisis, people were like, yeah, we don't... There was a lot of hate from the left about the way that Trump was handling it. But now we're 4 years into COVID, and people get COVID all the time, and they don't give a shit.
Yeah. I had it 4 weeks ago.
And so now it's, again, it was, 2020, he mishandled it, he did, blah, blah, blah. And now, meanwhile, I had people who were like, you have to wear a mask, you can't go outside, blah, 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 with the whole COVID thing. And I get it. I do. When we don't have enough information, but we know that people are dying from something, like, yeah, what are you doing to help prevent that? And it's actually from my family. And meanwhile, and my parents were, you need to wear a mask. You can't go outside. You can't do this. You can't socialize with anybody, yada, yada, yada. It's COVID, blah, blah, blah. And again, we didn't know any information. But this summer, my parents put my little sister on a plane, flew her to Los Angeles, and put her around my newborn baby with COVID. And they fully knew that she had COVID before they had gone on.
Well, we're like 45 strains in, so it's not as deadly.
Well, and I was like 3 years ago, I was getting fucking lectured because I walked into fucking Target without a mask on.
Yeah.
And they were like, "How you get the fuck out of here?" They were like, "Get out of here now." They were like, "You can't be in here without a mask." And I was like, "I forgot it at home and it's not that big of a deal." And they were like, "No, you get out of here. You don't have a mask on." And it was like, I was like, I'm going to be fine. And they were extremely disappointed in me. They had conversations with me about it, blah, blah, blah. You're not doing your due diligence, blah, yada, yada. And then, like I said, this summer we went to Disneyland and my sister had to props to my sister. My little sister decided to wear a mask the entire time, but she probably could have just gone around fully unmasked the entire time and nobody would have cared. And so there's this whole idea that Trump didn't handle it properly, but meanwhile everybody has the same Trump mentality about COVID now, where it's just like, oh yeah, it's actually not that big of a deal. So, and again, like I said, we didn't know enough information. We know a lot more information now, and so that can change the way that you view things and all that kind of stuff. It's just like, Come on. It's okay. So now, what leg do you stand on with Donald Trump? And so now it's coming after the whole race thing and going after the George Floyd kind of incident where it's like, okay, who did you stand behind? Where do we go from there? That kind of stuff. I think we've been honest on this podcast before that, and when it comes to the whole George Floyd, we haven't actually, I don't think, divulged into it because we haven't really had like a serious, or we haven't had as big of a race issue come up as the George Floyd incident.
Yeah, nothing's percolated up like that where it turns into like a riot in a city or spreads around the country yet.
I think that when it came to that particular incident, it's so hard. And you're a libertarian, so actually this might be different for you. And you're like,
No, I got nuance. I have very nuanced opinions, and that's part of this is because you can finish your thing, but I just want to say I have nuanced opinions on this because I have, I think, on the one hand, my libertarian thoughts.
well, okay, so
But
I'm
I
not
also
libertarian.
have Andy, super listener / guest Andy, who's not law enforcement, but he's got a law enforcement mind. He wanted to be in. He wanted to be in it, and circumstances didn't allow for that. He has friends who are in it, and so he speaks well. He's a good advocate for the law enforcement. Like, just you want to say this was irrational. This is a beating. I can tell you what the law enforcement side is. You're not dealing with the bullshit all the time. You haven't dealt, So he gives that side and pushes back. And you're like, all right, that's food for thought. I'm not a cop. I don't deal with the things they have to deal with, which leads to them dying at a much higher rate than the average American because their blood pressure,
Their life expectancy.
is lower because their blood, it's up and down on the blood pressure, and it's just the stress that gets put on it, their life. So we don't talk about that.
Yeah, and I think it's...
So he's a good pushback when I'm being like, I'm sorry, I like law enforcement, but you can't just show up and start beating a black dude like that. I'm going to sound like a progressive in here, and Andy then rationally pushes back. And I'm like, okay, I understand that. So we got to figure out to meet somewhere in the middle. So you share your. Let's continue this because I have more thoughts, but you started it.
Yeah, so politically, and this is where, again, this works in our political podcast, is where, okay, so we look at what's going on with this George Floyd incident in 2020. For me personally, and my background, and how I respond, and I've seen lots of videos, I've seen lots of stuff go around where people are, they question police on a regular basis. That's their MO. They always ask to see a commanding officer. They ask, they always expect that the police is in the wrong and they are in the right. And we've got armchair lawyers out here out in their cars fighting against tickets and stuff. I don't know. That's how some people are, and again, this is where I was getting at with the libertarianism, where it's like maybe you're sitting there, you're fighting because the police do represent the state and the federal government. They're there to enforce laws, and they get so much shit from people on a regular basis. And my response always to police officers is always to comply with whatever it is that they're asking of me. And other people believe that you should be combative with them immediately. And there is some stuff, and to which I need police officers to admit, and I fully agree with this, that police officers need to admit, and I've seen videos, that they abuse power. They do have power over citizens, and so they need to acknowledge that there are those police officers that do exist. They don't represent the majority of us, or they don't represent me or whatever, but they do abuse their power and they believe that they're able to do this or that. And it's like, is that okay? In our area, and especially in the early 2010s, late 2000s, it would not have been uncommon for you to have been stereotyped based off of the vehicle that you were driving to get pulled over. Things are a little bit different now in the 2020s. But it would not have been uncommon for, if you had a lowered truck in our area, to have been stopped by a police officer.
Right.
And him to ask for your identification, and then for him to give you some ticket about something random. But really, actually, what he was doing was actually verifying whether or not you were, in our area, again, a legal immigrant. Because there's a stereotype that goes around with it. I knew people who weren't speeding, that didn't have tinted windows, that would get pulled over and they had their tags up to date, and they would get some random ticket, or they'd be like, oh, we thought it was this. And yeah, there is a part of it where it's like, that's interesting. That is a questionable kind of thing where it's, again, this is the important thing this is the thing that we're pulling people over for, is because you think that, like, maybe they would be bizarre things. There was an obstruction on their windshield, and it was like, and there wasn't one, and so then
it's definitely a stop and frisk moment.
And then there or it would be like, and so I had a friend who was, they were like, oh, we pulled you over because we thought there was an obstruction on your windshield. And they're like, what? And they ended up writing a fix-it ticket to them. It was almost like they had to come up with something. And it was because they had moved houses and they hadn't changed their address on their ID yet.
Right.
And so, it's kind of that stop and frisk kind of moment where it's like, oh, we didn't find anything, so here's something to kind of make it seem like this was legit. And so, that happens. But always, I believe in complying with law enforcement. You have the George Floyd incident, where George Floyd does not comply with law enforcement. Does law enforcement wrongfully detain him? No, as we found out.
Yeah, no, they didn't. There's a really good documentary on Amazon Prime, and it's not. My understanding was they went in like pro George Floyd, and then the more they dug in, they don't get to the point where they think like the white guy who went to jail shouldn't still go to jail, but they're like, by the time they were done, interviewed all the other cops who some have also went to jail, interviewed bystanders, like went through the whole thing, are like, yeah, no, there was a lot more nuance, which a lot of us at the time were like, there's got to be more
to this
here
story
than what we're just seeing on the problem with Americans. I'm going to speak for Americans. I don't know if this is the way in the other country, but it seems like Americans are like, when we lean into something, like we go way in more than Europeans do. Europeans, probably because their society is older, they always stay a little more nuanced than we do.
Well, and also,
we think we see something on video, that's what happened. Sorry, that's not the case. You could be off to the side.
Well, and how many seconds did it take for somebody to turn on their
Correct.
camera?
But I mean, even just video is not always angles being different, whatever, like context before because no one walks around with the camera on. We're like, oh, randomly got this thing. So I saw, well before it turned into, if I saw George Floyd in the shop where the guy was kicking him out of his shop for stealing stuff, I got the whole, no, yeah, exactly. He got it after everyone. And then someone was like, oh, this is escalating. Now I'm going to start recording.
Right.
But we look at something and you're like, and that's the pushback. You don't believe? You think what happened to George Floyd? It's on video. Yes. Part of it is on video. That happened even with Rodney King. And I don't defend the Rodney King cops because they did. Reason why they should have gone to jail was they violated LAPD policy.
And same thing with the George Floyd case is that police officer, all good police officers that you talk to nowadays talk about the fact that, yeah, he did not handle that
Correct.
well.
That's the thing. It's not that he targeted a black dude. It wasn't even that thing in Rodney King. Rodney King was high as a kite on something. You don't get tased as many times as you do. And the problem is you had a bunch of jackass LAPD officers who weren't following their training, who decided to start beat the shit out of this guy. I don't know if that means you need to go to jail. I guess that's what we have to figure out as a community, not as a society. At the very least, you need to lose your job.
Yeah.
Your whole training is not lose your mind because one black dude who's on speed or whatever is not going down with the taser. Okay, you still got a baton. You still got a gun. We have all these other things. We don't turn into what they turned into, which was we're just going to turn this into a beat down on the side of the 210 freeway. So they had every right to get punished. And then again, communities get to decide. I think that's my other problem is we turn community things into national things just because we have national news. And a lot of things that's a Minneapolis problem. I've been to Minneapolis once. I can say I've been to Minneapolis. If you ask me, what do you know about Minneapolis? Nothing. I know they have a football stadium and at one time had the world's largest mall. Other than that, I don't know anything about it. Frankly, I didn't even know there's a black community in Minneapolis. It's cold as fuck. I would expect it. Well, that's always been weird that the Lutherans have moved Somalis into Minneapolis. That's odd. It's like, why are you moving them from like equatorial Africa into? Well, it's because that's where all the Lutherans are. Anyway, that's a side note. But
I mean,
let's stop turning national.
You're making that joke, and it still baffles me about Chicago being like one of the.
Oh, that's true too. But we had a guy who I don't know if he died or just got beat up in New York City because he was selling off-market cigarettes. We had a kid die in Louisiana because he wasn't complying with the cops. We had the whole thing in St. Louis under Obama where Michael Brown, where supposedly a cop just shot him for no reason. Video evidence proved otherwise. This guy was trying to take the guy's gun in his car. The Obama administration, the Justice Department under Obama administration said, we're going to go in here and we're going to investigate this because they thought they were going to get a dirty white cop. Guess what happened? They come out and said, cop did nothing wrong. Michael Brown was the instigator of this. That's why he got shot. Oh, that's great. That's nice to know. $30 million later after St. Louis, parts of it get burned down. So
yeah,
I think people from the outside want to turn things into things that they know nothing about. They know nothing about the community. Like, I can speak confidently about Los Angeles. I can speak confidently now having lived here for 20 years of Tulare. I understand in Tulare why people get targeted. So I have a general understanding of how modern policing works. Most people think cops are just kind of everywhere. I think that's what their idea is. There's a cop assigned everywhere. A lot of cities around the United States, there are very few cops assigned to your neighborhood if you live in a upper middle class neighborhood. So, for our town, Tulare, most of the east side is fairly well off. The west side is mixed, but the predominant lower class are in the middle of town or west side of town.
Right.
So, way modern policing works is they keep stats. They have stats on people calling in for cars being stolen, break-ins, whether it be auto or home, stabbings, yada, yada, yada. And what they do is, if you got a police chief trained in modern, and I don't know if Tulare does this, but I'm pretty 90% sure that they do. You put your force where the crime's going. You don't waste them where no crime is happening. And yes, they start looking for excuses to pull people over, hoping that they pull over a guy because he's got too much tint on his windows, or he's got a brake that's not working because it is both of those things are violations of the code in either the city or the state. And then you hope that you get this guy because he's got drugs or he's got a gun. And maybe even that gun's been used in a crime that we're trying to solve. Yeah. And I understand it's frustrating if you live in that neighborhood because you're seeing people pulled over all the time. It seems penny ante shit because the white people I know on the east side of town, they've got the same tinted windows. They're not getting pulled over and ticket written. Their car's not being looked through. I get it. And I don't know where the middle is on that.
I don't either.
Because a lot of the people in those neighborhoods who aren't complaining are perfectly fine with it. Because they are tired of the knuckleheads who are causing trouble in the neighborhood. They are tired of the gangs that are selling drugs and beating each other up or shooting at each other and throwing shots. They actually want it to go away. Those people don't usually talk unless things get really crazy and out of control, and then they start really making their voice known, which then we get the 1992-94 crime bill in the federal crime bill, which Joe Biden was a co-signer on, famously.
Lies.
Which, yes, led to, I would say, a lot of black folks being thrown in jail, maybe unnecessarily, because of our war on drugs. But you know who pushed for that bill to be passed? The Black and Hispanic caucus in the Senate and the House. Because their constituents were saying, we cannot continue to have this level of crime in our neighborhoods. So, look, I think if I am against the federal government inserting itself into local matters. This is where I would compromise. If I was president, I would find the money to fund body cams for all police, police, sheriff, blah, blah, blah units around the country. Because I think that is an incredible technology. One, it makes the guy who is an asshole cop, because there are a lot of those. That's where people who defend cops need to understand there are a lot of people who gravitate towards law enforcement because they know they can get away with being a bully or worse.
Yeah.
And the problem is the thin blue line defends those assholes instead of being jealous of their reputation, and the union becomes the thing instead of being like, no, you're why we have a bad reputation with this segment of the community. You're out of here. You're making everybody else look bad. It's the same problem in school districts. The union rules.
Yeah.
Shitty teacher is treated the same as teacher of the year. No. Shitty teacher is out of here. We'll bring in somebody else. And if they turn out to be crap in 2 years, they're out of here until we find another teacher of the year. And so police departments, I think, body cams put guys on notice who are assholes and who shouldn't be cops. You're now being watched. And it also defends cops in moments where a lot of times, like you said, someone with an iPhone starts the phone and misses the first 5 minutes of context where the guy's like, I need you to get out of the car. I need you to get out of the car. I don't need to explain to you right now why you need to leave the car. Can you please get out of the car? Blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden, like, it's a national thing.
You're dragging me out of the car.
I have my body cam. I was being nice. I was asking to be compliant. I'm sorry. The law says I don't need to give you a reason to get out.
Right.
You need to get out. You can, on the one hand, complain that I'm a guy holding a gun and I can kill you if I want to, and then also say, fuck off, I'm not getting out of my car. I'm the same dude with a gun and a taser or pepper spray or whatever I got. So what are we going to do here? Yeah. And if you're not, I get it. If you're not doing anything, I've been pulled over before for not doing anything. I've been asked out of my car. I've been asked to sit down and handcuffed because someone thought me and my buddy were stealing cars. And 2 hours later, it was a minor inconvenience. The sheriff let us go and apologize. Was I pissed in the moment? Yes. But I kept my mouth shut. And I also didn't walk away saying, LA sheriff are all a bunch of fucking assholes.
Yeah.
They got the wrong guy.
Yeah, I think what's really difficult with law enforcement is, the cameras need to run. And then also for all you armchair enthusiasts, is don't watch a fucking video or 2 or 3 videos or whatever and feel like that translates to all of cops.
Yeah.
Across the country. And it's like, no, that's stupid. You should never do that with anything where you feel like you've watched 2 or 3 videos and all of a sudden you're a fucking expert on how whoever or whatever acts in their environments and that kind of stuff. It's fucking annoying. Yeah, and I've watched, and here's the thing is, and we haven't even focused on the African American aspect of it really. But I've watched white people be so fucking rude to cops and just like are trying to, push the limit, and they're like, nope, I don't need to talk to you. Nope, I don't need to talk to you. Blah, blah, blah. I know my rights. Yada, yada. It's not about knowing your fucking rights.
Right.
Because also, here's the thing. Is that when you want... and here's so funny about cops. Is... They're there to... They don't decide whether or not you're guilty or innocent.
Yeah, that goes off to the district attorney. They can charge you and say, we're charging this guy, and the district attorney can come along and say, yeah, I'm dropping those charges. We're not doing that.
It's so fucking funny, right? Like, people are sitting there and they believe that because they got pulled over that it's an admission of guilt.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and it's like, nope. The cop is coming up and saying, hey, this is what I've seen. And you can go and take it from there. But all of a sudden, like, people lose their shit. And I was like, okay, you've been an armchair enthusiast, but you still don't understand what the point of cops are.
Yeah.
And what it is that they're supposed to be doing. And so I get frustrated. And I'm pretty left on this issue of, like, I do think that there needs to be a demilitarization of the police.
Okay, that's where I'm glad you're taking this. I want to end this part, and then we'll go back to COVID and then end the episode.
Yeah.
But yeah, I keep going with that. I agree.
Yeah, I think that there needs to be a demilitarization of the police. I don't feel like
the buying of these military armored vehicles is asinine. Like,
Yeah.
we have one in Tulare, but I've seen, like, there's a town up in like Atherton up in the Bay Area, which is like, there's like 5 or 6 towns that are the most affluent cities in America, and they've got like tanks for their little like 50-person police department. And it's because, well, the Pentagon gave it to us because it was surplus from Iraq. It's like, that's not a reason for accepting an armored fucking vehicle in Atherton. Like, when are you knocking down the doors of some cartel in your neighborhood and you need this armored vehicle? This is just a toy for the cops at best. Or COVID comes around and we start driving it around just to remind everybody, if you leave your house when we don't want you to, we could arrest you and blah blah blah. So there's no good reason for it one way or another.
Yeah, and so my dad actually went to, when he was going through his doctoral program at USC, he had a guy in his program that was talking about his dissertation was going to be about a lot of the education of the police force and how it's very much replicated after the armed services.
Mm-hmm.
And to where there's a dehumanization process that kind of goes through that.
Absolutely. I've read that. I've read the book by the guy who wrote that like 4 or 5 decades ago, and that became the Bible for police. I've literally, you can down. It's now like copy. It's not. There's no copyright on it or something, or it was a paper he wrote or something. I've downloaded the thing off the internet. It was during one of these police things, and I was like, all right, cops need to back off. I found the thing, downloaded it, and read it, and I'm reading it like, yeah, it's like, no, you got to assume everyone. That's where me and Andy have gotten into it. The police mentality is everyone you pull over is a threat.
Yeah.
And it's good to talk to someone who is in law enforcement or is law enforcement friendly adjacent. To explain why. Because they give a good reason why. My response is healthy society cannot exist if cops think everyone they're engaged with is a threat. So 100%. I don't know this, and this is one of the things where I've talked about before. We need to have good, honest, healthy conversations about this, and not try to solve the problem, because I don't know what the problem. I don't know how to solve the problem.
Well, here's my thing: is I say, okay, is it worth the $20,000 pay raise if I sit there and I give you $20,000 more a year if we sit there and say that you don't view every single person as a threat?
Right.
I'd pay $20,000 extra a year.
I think it's somewhere in that we
treat human beings like human beings. And yes, there are cops that treat people like human beings, but yet in the back of their mind they're like, I don't know you, I don't know what's going on.
Correct.
So right now in the news, in the last couple, we've now had the body cam footage of the shooting that happened in the woman's home who was mentally unstable, who was like boiling water or whatever, and like comes over and the cop shoots her dead. Again, and you watch the body cam footage, and he doesn't seem to be treating her like a human being. You watch that body cam footage, I've watched it, and you're just like, you're treating her as less than. Like, you know what I'm saying? You're not talking to her like she's a person on the street.
Right.
And so it becomes kind of this issue where it's like, okay, so now there's this, like I said, there's this military aspect of everybody's a threat, you know, and I don't, and again, I never know what I would do in those situations. I'm not going to sit there and say like that if I was a cop, I would do better. Like, that's so fucking dumb. Like,
right.
Don't ever fucking say that. I remember we had somebody who was shot we had an African-American guy get shot in our area. And I think we talked about it on the podcast before. And it was a life-changing moment for me.
It happened right in front of the church we were at. We used to go to, that we talk about a lot. Yeah, it happened it literally happened in front of the building we were shitting on in the last episode. So.
It literally happened in front of my office in that building that we were shitting on. And I remember people were like, they could have just shot him in the leg or whatever. And I'm like, okay, that's fucking stupid.
That's not how it works.
I was like, you pulled a gun.
If you're a civilian and you do gun training, you're told you shoot to kill.
Yeah, you shoot center mass.
You
shoot the target.
You shoot the target. Doesn't matter if you're
not like sitting there and like, all right.
Yeah,
like,
they'll shoot the leg.
I think
Biden said that one time. Like, we need to train cops to shoot in the leg. It's like, it's hard enough. It's hard enough. It is actually hard with practice. I mean, people get really good at it, but let's be honest. It takes a lot of practice. It's hard in a moment, particularly, yes, at a target range, it's good to hit it. You can hit center mass. In a chaotic situation,
right? Like, people are all of a sudden making it seem like everybody can just like,
yeah. Oh, you said it. They've watched too many movies that are nonsense. That's Hollywood stuff. In the moment, it's difficult. You got you're
in
trained.
In the moment, everybody's looking like fucking the stormtroopers.
Yeah,
on fucking Star
Wars. You're
trained.
Yes, you're trained. You're a trained police officer. You spend time on the gun range, but now your adrenaline's up. That person's moving. It's not just a straight linear target. Yes, you're hoping to get center mass, and most cops do. But again, civilians are trained the same way. If you're someone who believes in defending your home, you've got a gun, In California, you want to own a gun, you've got to do a certain amount of training. You're told the same thing. No, they're not walking through the door and you have an aversion to killing people, so you think you're going to shoot them in the foot because you've seen it in a movie. No, you're putting it on target. You're hitting them in the torso, center mass.
Yeah.
And probably enough damage is done, a good chance they're going to die. Yeah. That's just the way it is. That's why I don't own a gun.
Yeah.
Because every time I want to own a gun and I think I want to do home defense, I don't think I could live with some asshole finally goes through the house. I would rather take the risk and not have to live with I killed somebody because he came into my castle and violated my castle. Because 9 times out of 10, we get freaked out again because of television. We get freaked out about, oh, they're gonna break in and they're gonna rape. Most people don't break in your house because they're gonna rape your wife. They're breaking in to steal shit. I can replace stuff that gets stolen.
Yes, 100%.
So
it's called insurance, everybody.
Anyway, I go back and forth. We have a friend who goes to Kauai often, who's a firefighter. So again, I'm not a big fan of the first responder thing. That got invented around 9/11. I think it's overused, but anyway, okay, fine. He will tell you. Because we had a cop, 2 years ago, year and a half ago, commit suicide.
Yeah.
3/4 of a mile from my house.
Yeah.
Right on the road, side of the road. We know the family. Colton and I both know the family. Not intimately, but we know them. Yeah. Enough to when they showed up at church, it was a pretty, our church a couple weeks later was a pretty emotional moment.
Yeah, 100%.
And he said at the time, no, everyone talks about the homeless. They talk about the inner cities. They talk about this. No one talks about the suicide rate in the fire department and the police department. Nobody does. They just shit on us. Yeah, I didn't know this, Wes. Tell me more. And just unloaded.
Yeah. And
part of it's because these guys, if you're a cop or even a firefighter, because most firefighters in a lot of cities, particularly ours, our city is pretty much fireproof.
Yeah.
So the idea of firefighters in a lot of cities showing up to fires, that's not really the case. They're pretty much glorified paramedics because in our town, anything that's been built in the last 2 or 3 decades is very hard for it to burn because we're, aversion to fire. So, which is good. But what they're dealing with is a lot of result of crime and stuff like that. That adds up. And then if you're a cop, you're seeing what's been done to a 9-year-old. You show up where the mom who's on meth puts her baby in the microwave because she thinks she's putting... That all builds up, and we don't talk about it.
Yeah.
Which then leads to the guy overreacting when he shows up at a scene. And so we go, I think these are conversations that need to be had. I don't like the way again, this is another one of those conversations where everyone's just demonized. You're either pro-cop or anti-cop. That is not the way to go about this. And when I have one of these conversations with someone, and particularly who is pro-law enforcement, and I'm not suspect law enforcement. I support law enforcement. I just think we are seeing too many things occur that we see enough things that make me uncomfortable.
Yeah.
To your point, well, the thing we brought up, I don't think it's healthy for cops to be seeing everybody they encounter as a threat. Well, what's your solution? I don't know. My solution, I think the cop solution and the violent solution is just like what I've talked about, the homeless. Until we get families situated so that cops are not showing up on a regular basis to domestic violence situations, that they show up and it's just a domestic violence situation and punches are thrown and then all of a sudden a gun comes out and now I'm dealing with a dude or a woman with a gun. Yes, at some point, you show up to enough of those, you become desensitized to everybody. And you pull someone over for having out-of-date tags and you're like, I'm pulling you over because you're a fucking idiot who can't get your tags paid. What else are you not doing? And then it turns into profiling or whatever. Or a guy shows up at an incident that needs to be de-escalated, and because he's seen too many of these this week, it escalates. And it ends up on YouTube, and riots are now breaking out all over the city, all over the nation. And the same thing that's going to solve overly aggressive cops is going to reduce a lot of the other issues that are plaguing these neighborhoods, which is domestic violence, drug use, gang violence, and all those things. We need to reorient families so that people, even in lower neighborhoods, feel like their hope doesn't rest in illegal activity.
Yeah.
But being able to pull themselves up by their bootstraps and get their family moving forward in some situation.
How dare you make that comment right now?
So, all right, COVID real quick, because we're at 2 hours and 15 minutes. And we thought this was going to be a short episode. COVID real quick.
Sure, for sure.
I think if you're on the right, there needs to be a level of, and when I say this, I know you're going to be thinking of Fauci and all these people who lied or whatever. That's fine. I still think there needs to be a reminder of you've got to allow people to fuck up in big situations.
100%.
We have this idea of, by the way, if you're on the right, you already believe that the government's not really capable of anything. So for you to be really upset that all of a sudden the government doesn't handle something well seems a bit like, okay, that's what you expected.
Right.
And maybe that's not the problem, but I think it is. I think it was a lot of people like, oh, you said masks are going to work, and then 2 weeks later you said the masks don't work. Look, there's a level of you should know what masks work before we get into a pandemic. I get it. And I will point out that the CDC or NIH had white papers for decades that said if a pandemic like COVID came to the United States, the plan was to let everyone get it so it would die out quickly. Because viruses like that, the more people get it, viruses are this strange thing in nature where they actually kill themselves out.
Yeah.
They want to grow, and the more they grow, the weaker they get to where they actually die out at some point or get so weak that they're not consequential, which is where we're at now. So that was the plan. It was
Why we don't die from influenza.
Right. The plan was something like this comes, we just let it. We try to mitigate high risk people, and we just let people catch it so this thing dies out quickly. Whatever reason, they did the opposite. I think they did the opposite because somebody got in their mind that they really wanted to do this new mRNA technology, so we could show we can do a vaccine in a couple months and not 7, 8 years, 10 years like it took for polio and measles and whatnot. That's my theory. The other side, you weaponize science, you turn it into religion, pay for it. That's your problem. You shouldn't have done it. Science is not as emphatic as you say it is. Science by nature is supposed to be questioning and constantly questioning and checking and verifying. Science works when someone else in the science world says, I don't buy that. I'm going to try to run a test on that. And we had for 2 years people saying, shut the fuck up. The science is settled. Science is settled should never come out of your mouth. So you earned it. You ruined science's reputation. Not the people who were questioning COVID. You did. Because you told everyone to shut up science. So own it. Now you got to earn your reputation back. Churches specifically, I think our church handled it well. Which is, do we want to be shut down? No. Is this worth making a culture war fight over and saying we're going to open up anyway? No. We're going to stay closed as long as the government says we stay closed. Because guess what? Church on Sunday shouldn't matter that much if you're a Christian, particularly a healthy one.
But, and here's also, okay, so all of what Tim has said, I agree with. And here's also where I'm like, give to Caesar what is Caesar, give to God's what is God's. But us in the United States doesn't believe in that. And we're going to get to that in future episodes. But I'm just like, and especially with COVID, it became, what about my rights and what am I able to do? And
right.
And it's about me and what I want.
And I was certainly one of those. I was like, fuck that. I'm not wearing a mask. Masks are useless. And so, but I wore masks where I complied when I needed to comply.
And the part that was so frustrating was like, okay, what problems is this causing for you? Like, I don't understand. Like, can you not comply? Well, I've got this and I've got, okay, if you've got that, fine. And that was what it ultimately began being, right? Where it was like, okay, all right, go be an asshole. Go be, well, I can't wear it because, like I've got a breathing problem and blah,
the
blah,
masks
blah.
were an inconvenience.
And it was like, all right.
That wasn't worth getting uppity about.
The masks were an inconvenience, and they were an extremely minor inconvenience. And if you're sitting there and you're like, I'm like, yeah, I wear fucking glasses just like the rest of everybody else. Like, okay, yeah, it's annoying that my glasses get fogged up.
Right.
Like, I taught in a classroom with it on. I worked my entire day with, like, having to wear the mask. And I had a conversation with one of my friends, Eric. Eric gave me shit over the fact that I was like, I will say, like, I said that I was out of breath one day and he literally, like, eye rolled me and he was like, come on, Colton, like, shut the fuck up. And I was like, but I was wearing, like, the full, like, cotton mask and, like, all that kind of stuff. And Eric's always worn they weren't even Eric was, like, one of our biggest friends groups that was always like, yeah, you have to, like, you need to wear a mask. He would always wear it and all that kind of stuff. But he wouldn't even wear masks that were, like, actually approved, that were actually, he would always just wear those little, like, paper ones.
No, a proper mask, you're not supposed to wear that long because at some point, I think it's what carbon dioxide stuff builds up. You're not, and
and so he'd always wear that one, and it was like, and I was like, yeah, I could breathe if I had one of those. Like, I was like, yeah, that thing barely counts as a mask. Like, so.
My line was the vaccine mandates. And fortunately, I didn't work at a place where I had to get vaccinated.
We never had to get vaccinated. They asked us if we wanted to, and I was like, yeah, sure. Because, again, my idea was about being a part of the solution, and that was the part about COVID where people never knew that they had it. So wearing the mask was to keep you from getting other people sick. And people were like, well, I'm not sick, so therefore I don't need to wear it. And the mask was never about protecting you from other people. It was about you protecting yourself from giving it to other people. And so what it became was, and so if you viewed it as I'm trying to keep it became a selfless act as opposed to this selfish thing. But everybody that wanted to take off their mask and be like, I don't want to wear a mask. It was like, why are you being so selfish? Like, it's about you and your world and your rights and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, yeah, you're right. The government technically shouldn't be able to tell you what to do. Yeah. But do you care about other people? And it's like, well, no. That's basically what you were communicating to me. It was like, I don't care about other people and whatever it is. It's about me and what I want to do and all this kind of stuff. And it was me. And
yeah,
it was
I
about
think that's
me
where
and my rights.
Hyper individualism kicked in on both sides. And the left will say,
on
like,
both sides, 100%.
"Oh no, we weren't for our. We were trying to get. We were trying to do what's best for everybody. No, you were trying to impose vaccines and all this because you wanted to feel safe. Let's just be honest.
Yeah, 100%.
On the one side, it was don't tell me what to do, and the other side was you tell everybody to do what to do so I feel safe. It was both. It was hyper individualism on both sides.
100%.
So, yeah, we need to find better mediums. I'm at the point. The next person that I get motivated to vote for as president, it's not going to be whether they're right or left. It's going to be whether they come out and they seem like they want to win by 60, 70% and not 49 or 50%. Where they say, folks on the left, I know you hate these right-wingers because of this. We need them in our part. We need them in this movement. If we're going to get things done, we're going to have people that you think are Nazis or whatever. They're not Nazis. We need them in here. And what we have now, I mean, we literally have that now with this election. We have two people who seem perfectly fine to win like 48-46.
Yeah.
What is that? That tells me right there, you're not a leader. You're the opposite of a leader.
Right. I got my friends that back me up, and that's all that I need.
Exactly. And from a political science standpoint, just pure political science, that's a loser. You get things done in government when you walk in and say, fuck off, I know you don't want to do this. I got 60% of the American people who said we're going to do this. So move the hell out of the way, or I'll make sure you get voted out in 2 years if you're the member of the House.
Right.
When things haven't changed that much, politics has gotten pretty lazy and stupid. But when you got a president up there wagging his finger at you, or she's wagging her finger at you, and she's won 48% of the votes, like, well, I got 70% of the people who voted me in, so I ain't going anywhere. So go to hell. I don't care if you want that thing or not.
Right.
But if you got 60% of the people who voted for your 70% also voted for the guy or girl you don't like, it's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna have to do some business.
Yep.
I'm gonna have to compromise on this thing, maybe allow for some taxes or in this thing, but we don't have that. We got people who want to do, and it's because we got a political class that it's both people who are running for office, they're not leaders, and they're spending millions of dollars on political consultants who verify this. Hey man, you thread this needle and get Ohio and Pennsylvania, and I'll get you elected. Getting elected is not what we're trying to get done here.
No.
You're trying to become president of the United States. And guess what? The more votes you get, the more consensus you have, the more power you have. And I mean that in a good way. I think presidents have too much power. But no, you want a president who says, hey, look, we need to stop going to war.
Yeah.
And when the other side complains, shut up. I got 65% of the country who agrees with me.
Right.
We're moving on.
Yeah.
Next thing.
Exactly.
But we got losers, including Donald Trump, if you're a Trump supporter, including Kamala, including Biden, including Hillary. We've had nothing but 2-3 generations of losers. Obama's the last one. I was not an Obama fan. His second campaign, he got away from it, which is why he barely got 50%. That first campaign, and I did not vote for him, but I probably would this go around because I am so thirsty for someone who, if they turn out to be a liar, that's shame on him or her. That's not shame on me. But he built a consensus.
Yeah.
Through hope, which Christians should buy into.
Absolutely.
And again, I didn't buy his message, and I did not like McCain, and I voted for McCain. I found McCain was a warmonger who used his military record to tell anybody who disagreed with him to shut up, and I didn't like it, even then. But I'm telling you what, the next Obama or Trump who comes along and actually does something to reach out to the other side and tell his side, would you shut the hell up?
Yep.
We're trying to build unity in this country. I'm going to vote for them. And I don't care if they're going to raise taxes on the rich.
Yeah.
Because we need a period where everyone can kind of get along and go along.
Right.
This cannot continue. Some of the talk about civil war is reckless, but it's also true. We continue at this rate, one day Texas or California is going to decide, fuck all you people, I'm done.
Yep.
I don't think it would be a civil war like we had in 1865, partially because I don't think there's a political will to actually militarily move against the state. But it'd be nasty.
Yeah. Well, I think that's good. So
That's good. We've got more politics coming. We still have more Apple Music coming too. Just Colton and I we have less time to plow through the list.
I know.
You don't have the summer, and I've been busy, and I have but I think both of us like frames of mind to get through it. So it's not just like easily listening. We're trying to pay attention to this album a lot, particularly since a lot of them, well, half of them probably for you. Like I don't know much of the hip hop. There's other stuff you don't know, so we're hitting albums we never listened to. So
yeah,
if I'm going to give a 10-minute opinion on it, I need to actually digest it, not be background music.
So we hope you enjoyed this episode of the Go to Hell podcast. Please go on to our Substack if you want to go on to our Twitter, our Instagram, our Facebook, whatever it is, source that you like to go to. You can listen to us on lots of different places. Please rate and review us as you see fit. And as a part 2, because this is part 2 of our thing, if you voted for Donald Trump in the 2016 election, you can go to hell.